Hey, True Advocate, I'm back with another family interview today, but before we get into that, I want to thank all my Patreon, Apple subscribers, and Coffee supporters. You all help keep this little show going. Without your generous support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and we wouldn't be able to help families like we do, so we appreciate you more than we can express. Today's case is a tough one and can be a bit confusing to follow. I've tried to clarify and clean up as much of the confusion as possible, but as it's unsolved, there will always be a level of confusion and uncertainty. It's important to know that the family of David Ortiz Jr., the victim in this case, feel confident that they know who is responsible for their son's disappearance. I want you to remember that every suspect is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And while the Ortiz family believe with their hearts that they know who made their son disappear, it's not the contention of true consequences that these individuals are innocent or guilty. I will leave that for the courts to decide. I chose not to edit the names out because that would not be fair to this family who have been fighting for answers for nearly 13 years. I met with Liz and David Ortiz Sr. in Silver City, New Mexico, along with Christine Steele, who is a former reporter for local press outlets in Silver City. She's retired from journalism but has started a nonprofit called Southern New Mexico Unsolved Murders. She does a lot to help the families in Grant County, New Mexico that are fighting for justice. If you can, check out her website in the show notes below, and if you feel inclined, please donate to help some of these families, or at least share some of the cases that need attention. Okay, let's get into it. I woke up early to make a 4-hour drive to Silver City, New Mexico from Albuquerque. There, I met the Ortiz family and Christine Steele at a restaurant for brunch. We discussed the episode as we ate and had some light conversation. The plan was to leave the restaurant after we ate and head to the graveyard.
Damien helped with this. My daughter's son.
Oh, really?
He was little. He was like 2.
Yeah.
And he would just throw the rocks and stuff.
Right.
So that's why I say he helped us.
As much as a 2-year-old could
Yes.
help. Yeah.
That was his part in it. But he picks everything out that we buy. He picks it out for her. For Mother's Day, birthdays, Christmas.
They took me to a double grave where their daughter had been buried. We'll get into that one later. They also set up a small memorial for David Ortiz in the same plot, even though they haven't found him yet. It was a bittersweet moment as I could feel the love that David's parents had for him and his sister, as well as the longing that they had for things to be different, for their kids to be okay. As is normal with every advocacy-focused episode on this show, I'm going to let you hear from David's parents about who David was and what he meant to them. But before we do that, I want to set some context. When I met with David's parents, they were dying to tell a story, so they started right away. And what you're going to hear is a midpoint in our conversation, and there's some context that you will need to know before we listen to his parents describe him. I'm also going to play a small clip from Christine before we hear from Liz because she gave a nice summary about David and the circumstances that were happening prior to his disappearance. Okay, let's get into the context of the episode. David Jacquez Ortiz Jr. was born on November 22nd, 1991, and in 2009, he was working hard to get his GED because he had learned that he was going to be a father. His son Joshua was born in September of 2009, and David was so excited to be a father. He and his girlfriend at the time, and the mother of his child, Amy, were madly in love. David had been saving money and had some money in the bank. He had dreams and hopes, and he was elated to be a dad. Amy's mom did not approve of their relationship, and is said to have been driving a wedge between David and Amy.
David Jr. was not a bad kid. He was a
really, for this town, he was a great kid because he wasn't involved in drugs. He wasn't violent. He didn't have, at 18 years old, he had no record. He wasn't a criminal. It's not like he was a kid who got in trouble. This is a hardworking, blue-collar family. Their kids were hardworking kids. I remember the time Liz said, my kids would always tell me what they were doing and where they were, what they were up to. She goes, even though they were pains in the asses, like they were normal, everyday kids.
Yeah.
And for an 18-year-old boy, David was 18. He was a boy, but he was a man. He was working a full-time job. He had a savings account. I don't know about you, but at 18, I didn't have $300 in the bank. This was a young man who was, I feel, I never got to know him, but I feel like he was someone who was starting to look at adulthood and starting to look at what his future and what his future could be. He had a son. There's nothing more important to families than their children. And he had a baby son, and he was saving money for his son. And he had saved money in the bank. He was working a good job with the city. He had just gone to school to get his high school diploma with his mom. Like, he was doing all the right things in life. And he had a future. And there's nobody who was his enemy. He wasn't dealing drugs on the street. He wasn't a rat on some drug dealer. There was just no other reason that he would disappear. He would not run away. He was planning his future. Whether that was going to be with Amy or not, he was planning to have his son in his life. He was saving money to give his son a future. And then he just disappears. And that's why, to me, it's just not a mystery. The puzzle pieces are there.
Right. Just no one's willing to put it together.
No one's willing to put them together. And they're there. They're on the table. You can see them when you look at the whole case, both of their children. You look at all the things and all the tangents. It's a fucking giant jigsaw puzzle. And all you need to do is start putting those puzzle pieces together. And this one connects to this one, and this one connects to that one. And like Liz has said, a lot of these people connected to their children are dying. And the cops are telling us it's the lifestyle because they're involved in drugs. These are not really hardcore drug kids. These are kids who maybe dabbled, maybe they did a little of this or that, but these aren't the bad, like, they're disappearing and dying because they know something. They're connected in some way. They know about it, heard about it, were part of it. They know something. And if they disappear or die or OD, they can't talk.
Okay, now that you have some context, let's listen to Liz talk about her son, David.
When he was born, his brother took me to the hospital. We were actually in his brother's Durango.
David Sr.'s?
His brother Michael's Durango.
David's brother, though.
David's brother, yeah. We were in the Durango, and I was like, we were driving down the road to get to the hospital, and are you sure you're going to have the baby? Are you sure you're going to have him? I said, yeah, go to the hospital. Are you sure? He goes, I could turn back. And I'm like, just go. And sure enough, when Michael pulled up, we went into the hospital, and I had David at 3:15 in the afternoon. And
this is November 22nd.
November 22nd of 1991. He was born at 3:15. He was 7 pounds, 13 ounces, and 19 and a quarter inches.
He's your second kid?
Yes, he's my second child.
Okay.
And he was a good baby. He was spoiled. He was a chunky little baby. And I used to tell my mother-in-law that, because he grew out, he had a strawberry patch on his arm. And I told my mother-in-law that was her fault, because one time my sister-in-law brought me a big old thing of a bundle of strawberries, and she brought me whipped cream, because I would always crave them. And my mother-in-law was like, you're gonna get fat or something. She took him away from me. So David came out with the strawberry, and I told her, that's because you took him away from me. I was craving that.
He really wanted
so was he, yes.
He liked those strawberries.
Yeah, and he was a joy. Him and Nicole were so close, and their cousin Victoria, because Victoria was born a month before Nicole. Well, a few days before Nicole. Yeah, they were 3 weeks apart, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, it was Victoria and then Nicole, and then a year and 9 days later, David was born.
The family was tight.
Yeah, we were all close.
Hanging around our cousin.
Yeah, they
grew up good. Junior was the type of person that just wanted to fit in.
They would play football. They would play baseball. We would go camping a lot. He loved camping. All the kids loved camping. He loved camping. He loved fishing. The outdoors. He loved it. Just wanting to go hunting. When he disappeared, me and him, we were drawn for deer hunting. And we never were able to go. That was going to be his first hunt. He always, when we would go hunting, he would always tell his dad, "Dad, I want to go hunting." He wanted that experience too. And it didn't happen. And when we got drawn to do it, he was so happy. He was pumped. He was ready to go, and he looked forward to it. And
he didn't make it to that hunt. He ended
no.
up passing. It was in November, and he ended up missing October
his
31st.
hunt. Yeah, our hunt was November 13th to November 17th. And I have them. I can show you the licenses. I still have them.
What were his dreams? What did he want to do?
He wanted to finish school, and then he wanted to go into the Army. Because we would tell him that because his grandpa, his dad, was in the service. My grandpa and my tios served in the Army. We wanted him to do something because him and Amy were so stuck together. They were making names for their children already.
Wow.
And I was like, if you want to do that, you need to straighten up. That's why I was like, you need to not drink. You need to not smoke pot. Even though you like it, you need to not do it. Stay focused, because if you want to be in your son's life, you need to show Pat that you can do it. And he was doing that. He didn't go to regular school. He didn't go to Silver High School because he would get in too many altercations with that, because kids would mess with him and he would defend himself. But he would be in trouble because he would be the one to hit back, and they would catch him. So he went to Opportunity School. And
it's like an alternative high school.
Yes.
Okay.
It's Silver High Opportunity School he went to, and he was almost done. He was going to graduate that May in 2011.
You both were going to graduate together?
Yes. Because I didn't finish school, I had to go back to school because I didn't get the job I wanted. And I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to do it, because it was always on my mind to finish school. And that was my downfall, not getting that job I wanted. And I was like, I told the Lord, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get my GED. So I went to the Watts Hall. I signed up for it and everything. I went home and I told my kids. I said, I'm going back to school.
Were they proud of you?
Yeah, they were real proud of me. And I said, and you're going to be graduating. I said, Junior, you're going to be graduating. I said, we could do this together. It's going to be fun. We'll have a good time. And we were excited. We did. And I would take him to school because he worked in the daytime with the Public Works Department for the Silver City Public Works. And he would work in the parks. So he would water the parks, throw the trash and all that other stuff. And after that, he would go home and he would get ready, and I'd take him to school. And that was after hours at the SHOS. And he was with Mr. Guillat. I think that's how you pronounce it. He was with him. He was his teacher. And he was almost done graduating, and it was just...
Would he have graduated that December, Liz?
He would have graduated in May.
That May.
I would have... See, if I would have prolonged it, I would have graduated with him. But I was testing out as I felt confident. My final test that I had paid in October, I think it was October 17th, to go test out in November 10th.
David Jr. would not be able to graduate with his mom, though, because shortly before Halloween of 2010, he went missing. I want you to hear from his mom about how he met the mother of his child, Amy. You're also going to hear the name Pat. She is Amy's mother.
Him and Amy met because where we bought our land, where we put our trailer at, there's a single wide across the way, and her brothers and her sister and Pat lived there. And she would check out my son while he would, because we didn't have nothing in the front. It was bare. And he would sit on the step in his boxers, and she'd be checking him out. And she told me this. She told me that.
How old were they?
He was like We moved there in 2003. So
14
yeah,
or 13?
13 or 14, yeah. Yeah, because we waited till the end of the school year because we moved there in October of 2003. So it had to have been like in later 2003 or early school year of 2004 that they met. She would be checking them out, but I guess they met in school. They met, I think it was at
La Plata Middle School.
Yeah, La Plata Middle School.
So how old were they when Amy got pregnant?
He was 17 and she was 16.
Okay.
Yeah, and I even told him, I go, because before that, okay, Amy and David, they ditched school. We have a trailer in our yard that his dad had given us because he was already too old to go camping, and that was the family camping trailer. So he passed it down to David and me. He and Amy, when they ditched, David was at home, I was at work. They were in the camping trailer. No, I wasn't at work. I was asleep.
Yeah, they ran away or something. Or
They didn't show up at school. I was asleep, and he was outside doing the yard. Because I remember David telling me, he goes, Mom, you guys were calling everywhere. We heard you. We were in the trailer. He goes, we even went in and I went in there and I made us something to eat. You were asleep. And because you had took off somewhere. He's like, when Dad left, I went and made me and Amy something to sleep. You were asleep, and I went back to the trailer. But our dogs, it was Chico and Baby. They were Chihuahuas. Mm-hmm. They were over there barking at the door for them because they knew they were in there. And after that, David, he had gotten back home, and he was continuing with the yard. Well, when he got to the back, he saw Amy and David walking up the hill. And then and then he called me because I think at that time I was working day shift. And he tells me, he goes, Lizzie, they're here at the house. And I go, what? I was like, okay. I said, you keep them there. I said, you call Pat. I wound up calling Pat. And I told her, I go, the boys are at the kids are at the house. I said, I'm getting off work. I'll meet you there. So we were barely making a deck in the front yard. And it was my kids, him and myself that started building that deck as a family together. So we were building a deck. We had a couch on the deck, and they were sitting on the couch. And I walked up, and Pat's there, standing there, and I was telling him, I just told him, I go, what are you guys thinking? And I was like, you guys are trying to have a kid. This is before even she became pregnant with Josh. I said, you guys are trying to have a kid. I go, but you guys don't have no jobs. You guys you're not doing your schooling. Because David he stopped going to school after this guy, he was like in his 20s. He went to the school there and he beat up David. And the teacher called me, and I took him, and I just never sent him back to school. He was a scrawny little kid, but he would do push-ups and sit-ups and stuff. Yeah. And he wouldn't pick fights. Yeah. I've always told my kids, if you guys get in a fight at school, and if I hear that you started, I'm going to whip your ass. That's what I would tell them. If you're defending yourself, I won't say nothing because you're defending yourself. But if you start, then you're in trouble. When Amy was pregnant with Joshua, that's when David was straightening out, and he went back to school. And he was working, like I said, in the daytime at the Parks and Recreation, and he was going to school in the evening time. Before Joshua was born, he would go try to spend time with Amy, but it was a fight. He would have to sneak over there when Pat was at work, which she worked at the detention center, and Amy, she didn't go to school. She was always at home. So he would go visit her, and he'd make her food and everything. And she actually, one time, Pat let me take Amy with us to Las Cruces to go shopping because I wanted to get some stuff for the baby. I was proud to be a grandma.
Yeah.
So I was like doting on him and stuff. It was me, David, Amy, and Nicole and Charles. We all went to Las Cruces and we spent the day out there. And after that day, Pat didn't allow her with me anymore because I brought her home like an hour later than what she was supposed to be at home. Which I did call her and tell her we're running a little late, but we will be there. And after that, she wasn't able to be around me and David no more. She never liked my son, but then she got mad at me because she was late from coming from Las Cruces, which we didn't do nothing wrong. We went to the mall. She actually had fun. She did. She had fun. She enjoyed it.
Was David able to be there when Joshua was born at all?
It was a fight. Him and Amy would get into arguments because Pat didn't want him at the hospital. And David wanted to be there. And he told Amy, he goes, why is your mom a fucking bitch? Why doesn't she want us together? I'm not doing nothing to her. I want to be there for my son. And they would argue about it. So finally, when it came down to it, I was allowed to go and David was allowed to go. We were both in the room. Amy was in bed, of course. Pat, the little sister, David, and myself. We were all four in the room with her, but at the birth, I stepped out.
Sure.
But during that time I was in there, I'm over here consoling Amy, and everything, because she was hurting. And Pat was just looking at me. She was sitting there just looking at me. And then I would sit down, and at one time, David was sitting in the back, and there's a counter there with the sink. And the little sister, right there, she walks up to him. She just slaps him. I looked at her and I gave her a dirty look. I was mad, but I didn't say nothing because I didn't want for us to have an altercation in the delivery room. That would have been wrong. So I didn't say nothing. And then David went and he sat on my lap and I hugged him. And Pat tells him, do your friends know that you still sit on your mom's lap? And I hugged him even tighter. I was like, forget you. I didn't tell her that, but in my head, I'm like, forget you. When it was time, she had an epidural because she was having so much pain. And when it was time to deliver, like I said, I stepped out and I was in the waiting room. It's like a little area in the hospital. And actually, I fell asleep. And I don't remember what time that Joshua was born because I was asleep, of course. And David went in there. Junior went in there and he woke me up and he's, Mom, it's a boy. So I was like, yes, so I hugged him and I was like happy and I started crying and everything. He's told me he's come see your grandson. So I went in there and I got to see Joshua then and I held him and everything. And Pat's just looking at me and David like, you better enjoy it. You know what I mean? So I did. I enjoyed every moment of it. And I told David, I'm going to go home. I'm going to get some rest and stuff. And he's okay. And he told Amy, he goes, I'm going to go home with my mom and then she could bring me back. And that way I could spend the day with you guys. So she's like, okay. They gave each other a kiss and whatever. And we came home, showered up, everything. During that time we were gone, the lady that goes in after a mother gives birth to sign the papers and everything, she went there. She showed up over there. At that time, David, of course, he was at home with getting ready and everything to go back to the hospital. And they didn't put him on the birth certificate and they didn't give Joshua his name. And that was Pat told him he's going to be a Jordan. He's not going to be Ortiz. And that's another argument that they would have. But Pat finally won because he wasn't there when they walked in to do that.
As you can tell, there's a lot of animosity brewing between the Ortiz family and Amy's family. Things only got worse after Joshua was born. Listen to Liz describe what was happening between the time Josh was born and the day that David Jr. went missing.
David goes to see Joshua, but like I said, Pat would call the cops saying that he was trespassing. Because her mom used to live like across the way from her, like diagonally, in the trailer diagonally from her. So the grandma was keeping an eye out to see if he was coming. And Amy would bribe the sister not to say nothing with chores or whatever. She'd buy her something or whatever, while David would buy her something. And that's how they were able to keep it quiet for David to be over there looking. being with Joshua.
But Pat didn't want him there at all.
No, she didn't want him there. She called the cops. And even one of the times that David got off of work, and like I said, he used to work in the daytime, he went home, got ready. I took him to school. I dropped him off at school, and he had to wait for his teacher to get there and stuff because he worked at the high school, and then after hours he would go to the Silver Heights Opportunity School, which was across the street. So he was waiting with his friends, he was hanging out there waiting for his teacher, and that's when an officer went and told him about Pat calling the cops because he was trespassing at the house. And he goes, I just want to go see my son. What is wrong with that? And she goes, Pat doesn't want you there when she's not there. He's like, she doesn't want me there at all. So I'm going to see my son when I can. When I get a chance, I'm going to see my son. And he would do that. And then when it was getting close to Joshua's first birthday, David asked if we could go to the birthday party. Amy had to run it through Pat. And Pat, of course, she said okay because we were going to go too. And when we got there, we had brought his presents in, and David sat down on the couch in the corner like a little kid, grounded. And it was every time, before he went missing, every chance we got to see him, which was only that one time after the courts together. The time when we went to the birthday party, he sat in the corner like a child that was in trouble. And then when we had that first visit after he won his visitation rights, he sat in the corner of the couch too, like he was in trouble. And he didn't say nothing. And just the way he looked, he sat there staring like how you walk into a place where you feel you're not welcome. That's how he sat. He looked, and when he sat in the corner right there.
So obviously uncomfortable, obviously not happy.
Yes. Before David, we had the first visit. We had court in between that. After we had court that day, we had already arranged visitations for Joshua because we had to do it 72 hours before to go see Joshua. So right when we got out of court is when we went. He was allowed to take Joshua to our house for us to visit with him and everything, and all the family to meet him.
What was the other family's reaction to that?
They didn't like it because during the court, they said that David never supported Joshua or anything, and they have to send a letter to David of the reasons why they don't want him in Joshua's life, or they don't want us in Joshua's life.
After David won the case, Liz and David went to schedule visitations with Joshua as the court required 72 hours notice. David not only won visitation, but he won unsupervised visitation with Joshua. The judge called Pat a liar in court and made her sit down and be quiet. The family was overjoyed that they had won the case. They left the courthouse hugging each other and high-fiving one another. It was an amazing day for the Ortiz family.
Once we got the okay, we hugged each other and we high-fived each other because of the outcome.
But joy wouldn't last long, because 3 days later, David would go missing. On October 31st, 2010, David Ortiz Jr. gets separated from his sister Nicole and goes missing. Nicole goes home when she realizes that David isn't there. She and her mom start to look for him. They go to the house where they were and they ask the owner if she had seen David. The woman tells them no. Nicole then says, okay, well, if he pops up, please let us know because we are all very worried about him. Then Nicole starts to go look at all the spots David Jr. was known to frequent, but he was nowhere to be found. 3 days passed and Liz decided to go to the police station to file a missing persons report. She gave detailed information to the police about a scar that David had, the clothes that he was wearing, and any other details that she could recall. The officer that took the report asked Liz if there was anyone that she could think of. Liz told the officer all about the strained relationship between David and Amy's mom, Pat. As you can imagine, living in a small town, rumors often fly, and the family spent so much time chasing down these rumors to try to find out what happened to David. Then, out of nowhere, police stopped talking to the family. And when they would talk to them, things would get tense. Meanwhile, rumors continued to swirl, and the Ortiz family spent months chasing their tails trying to find David. And things with police only got worse.
The day he went missing, the day he had went with Chris Calloway, Zach Greeny, my daughter Nicole. They had all four went to Chapman's house. She lived over there on Leslie by the hospital in a trailer. And they went over there to her house. Okay, I don't know what happened. I don't know how Nicole and him separated, because Nicole was at home and I asked her, "Where's David at?" She's like, "I don't know, Mom." So she called Chris and asked him, "Where's my brother at?" He's like, "I don't know." So when I would call, they wouldn't really respond. And then finally, me and David, we would show up there at the Silver City Police Department. And first it was Detective Chapman Spurgeon. He's not there no more. But he told me to pretend like it's that he's out there with his friends, because he is 18 years of age, and if he don't want to be found, he don't have to. So if I run into him and he tells me that he don't want you guys to know where he's at, I don't have to tell you.
But this is out of character for David.
Yeah, it is. And that's what I told him. I go, he wouldn't just take off. He always told us.
How often did you talk to David?
Every time when David would go somewhere, when he would have somebody pick him up, he would tell me, "Mom, I'm going over here." And I would be like, "Okay, mijo, I love you. Take care and behave." That's what I always tell him. "Okay, Mama, I'll see you."
Was there ever a search? Did the police do a search?
They did, yeah, they did a search. They said they did a search at the landfill. They did a search at a place in Santa Clara in Arenas Valley.
Do you know why they were looking in those places?
Because they would tell us, and we would just tell them right away.
So you'd hear it from somebody in town or something?
Yeah. They knew who we were, and they would just tell us. And it was like, some of it was so awful. They told us that he was cut up, and he was put everywhere in separate areas. They told us that he was burnt, that they poured acid on him, that he was taken to El Paso, and he was put in, because there was a vehicle that he was in a trunk, and that he was in the back of the trunk, and they smashed him in the truck, the car. It wasn't a truck, it was a car. And that he was, Amy's the one that said that he was in Albuquerque. She goes, "They told me that he was in Albuquerque with his friends." And I was like, "Who does he know in Albuquerque?"
And I think that was the other thing, right? So he has this bank account, had $300 saved in there. Was that money ever touched by anybody?
No.
So
It's still there, but
he wouldn't have had money to be in Albuquerque hanging out with his friends. And if he did, he would have used that $300. What about his cell phone? Where was his cell phone?
I have it. His cell phone, he didn't have minutes on his cell phone, so he left it at home. But there's a lot of things that we were told and everything, and we would report it, but we didn't know what was being done about it.
And she goes, "If you find somebody that'll take over this case, we'll gladly give it to them. But we can't give you no paperwork." All right, so we go all the way to Las Cruces, and we go talk to the state police up there. And sure enough, they said, "All right, we'll look into it. We'll see if we can get it and take it over." They contact them, and they said they didn't want to give it to us. They didn't.
So they're just trying to get you off their back.
Get off their back, yeah.
When the current sheriff was running for re-election, what did he tell you?
Oh, the sheriff,
Villanueva,
he told me at the bank, I took my mom to the bank, and he said, "Well, I'm running for sheriff this year, and I want to get your vote." I go, "Do you even know who I am?" And we've been trying to get a person to help us out for a long time. And he goes, "No, I don't know who you are, and I'm David Ortiz. I'm the son of the Miss." Oh, we took care of the lady in Mimbres, and we found her, and sure enough, and if you guys vote for me, we'll I'll do everything in my power to help you guys out and for us to get the case. And so we voted for him. He got elected and everything. And come to say, I went over there to the sheriff's department with these three.
We all had a meeting with the sheriff.
And they made it sound good. We talked. We said the whole story and everything.
He changed his story because he said, oh no, I never said I would take the case over. I said I would do everything in my power to help. And he is the guy who was sheriff when the other unsolved murder, my first case, and he did involve the state police in that case. And so I said, okay, I do remember that. You did help solve that case. So, please help this family. And then I told him about WeTip and how we're going to try to get this funding for this anonymous tip line. And he's just not followed up with them. So he's not done anything he said he was going to do after our meeting.
So they went and did follow up on them, and they said that he was a joke, that why are you guys giving it to him? That was a PD, Silver City PD, saying that to us.
And so after we had the meeting with the sheriff's department, we had the meeting with Captain Melinda Hubbs.
But Melinda said that the sheriff said that we were talking crap about the PD.
That's what they both do.
Yeah.
Both departments do that to each other. She said the sheriff came in and started yelling at her and telling her. And we're like, we just want you all to work together to help this family. Why is everybody yelling at each other? This is a family who's lost so much. Can you imagine if your family lost half of what this family lost? Wouldn't you do everything in your power to help this family? And I feel like they just don't take it seriously. And they just dismiss them. They dismiss Elizabeth and David like they've done something wrong. And that it hurts my soul that these people are parents. They have children. And it's your job. And I just don't feel like they've treated them with the respect and the kindness and the compassion that they deserve. And I don't feel like they've dedicated the resources that need to be dedicated to this family's case.
Next time on True Consequences.
If you were to ask them today why nothing's happened, do you know would they say anything to you?
They'll tell you all the stuff that they did. And they did in the beginning. Because I followed it. I have every clipping. Elizabeth has every clipping. When David first went missing in October, when I was the editor of the Sun News at the time, we did a story within 3 days, I think it was, or it was like a week. Liz has that clipping. And so in the beginning, I don't know if they got tips, but they searched the landfill. They've searched
in Arenas Valley,
an area in Arenas Valley. They brought cadaver dogs. They did do a lot in the beginning.
This episode was written and produced by me, Eric Carter-Landin, and thank you so much for listening, and stay safe, New Mexico. If you want to support this show, go to patreon.com/trueconsequences or ko-fi.com/trueconsequences, or you can subscribe in Apple subscriptions to get ad-free early content